to one of these before birth, and then after death. Those environment on the periphery are both the same, or of the same type. But there is the mental, call it, after one goes out, before one truly become distilled into the nothingness of it. Because imagine that trying to understand the volume one is from understanding the mass of non-existent material they're trying to quantify. So that, okay, I perhaps I cannot measure my own weight, but I can at least have an approximation to it. The closest approximation I can have is where I'm destined to go, and then I can use that to satisfy my neuroticism. But the approximation is somewhere to stop, because now you're at least comfortable. It's comforting to have a system of explanation, to have a system that has each part figured out, that breaks it down from as abstractly from the broadest description field, and sort of isolate it down into what are the remnants that shows in each particular moment. What that brings down to, it's the character that doesn't show up on anyone's radar as a questionable person. This is what it's trying to mean in furthermore by the change that will become of man when he learns that he is God. Of the change that will become of man when he learns that he is God, is that he is also the thing that is for this place, and he can carry himself in this way. Is it possible? Is it impossible? Should we think of it as an actual plan? And should you think about it as just experimental thought? What direction is it? It's none of these directions, and there are these directions before, because man, this is the shyness in his thinking, or his or how does it characterize as a positive or a negative in the situation? It hinders him. It prevents him from immediately jumping to, sometimes the conclusion is right there to be jumped, but man is very sensitive to not make these jumps. He jumps to conclusion in the wrong places, but he does not in the right places. There are some right places to jump to conclusion, because all the data have brought them to, it's not exactly clear once again, because it become individualistic, but speaking from the generalized background, that there are places where the conclusion could be drawn, but this is not jumped, but this is drawn, that the conclusion is obvious, that the ears of earth ought to be heaven. And how is this art of heaven described? By fully functioning individuals that do not show up at anyone's radar as a negative person, because they have been authentically actualized in self-gratification, impulse control, love, charity. The attributes of the spirit are manifest here from a more technical direction, that's based on the explanatory system of the world, by including its components in the totality of the moving image of reality that you are a part of as an organism, as an organism to propagate and continue with, as best as one can comprehend it. It does not outrun comprehension reality, but language is much. Language is the fact to play with. Language is the wrestler with this. Language is what, in the final analysis, does any of the work. It is in language that all these things first become present. And so then that's just work then. Then that's thinking that goes along with it. And then that's searching that goes along with it. That's inquiry that goes along with it. And the litany of activities that follow any investigation into a matter one wishes to distill. Because we have a limited time, of course, in this field, or else this entire thing would just be infinity. What is infinity afterwards? That's the hypothesis. But in this moment, it's not infinity. You get sandwiched in between infinities, and you're one of the ones the lucky ones that are outside. You're one of the lucky ones that broke free before nature gets a sense that something's gone loose and tries to fix it. But it has this other relationship to it, but that's one way of comprehending it, because what is burning within, what man really has when he has life, is that he has this explosive resource that depletes. and it's in each movement that it's shared. Because it depletes, well, you can see the spark, because you don't have to get too technical and use more familiar language. You can see the spark when it shows up in babes. You see the spark display when it shows up in babes, because they are fresh off of non-existence. That's why they have that spark, and you're trying to babble things and trying to figure out the world, but not on the intelligible scale yet. You see that in babes, and then towards just call it not Freud anal stages or those other ways of description, but it reaches towards adolescence, and where one starts to form a personality, and then they're in youth. And if you're standing over here, kids, they look on youth and they say, "Oh, I envy the youth, because I remember when I was there, I was at the peak, the prime of my metabolism, and now I'm here where I can hear my bones creak when I get up." And they do this for generations to generations, and they do this generationally. And then, but each movement, I mean, the data is surplus. You could fill it with bunch of data that are just ready for the taking, but we only want it for the show, where it shows what, and then you can fill it with whatever character you like to. And here's where the temporal horizon flips. Well, we described this part before, but using it in this context also now helps, because it brings it into into another use. It brings it into another use, because this thing it just shows up everywhere where you're dealing with things of thought, because it's measurable. It's a lot of work to carry it all in all those places, but it's beneficial, meaning that you have a lot of time, and this time really only it slows things down. It gives steadiness, and it gives sustenance. And so what one is in that moment with, what they're trying to figure out is only to benefit them in accessing and searching on the world, in trying to make of it, from what that boiling means, what that depletion means. It is trying to make of it. It's self-reflection. That's where it comes to. Whenever it returns, it comes for self-reflection. It comes for coalescence. It's been projecting for coalescence since time equals zero. That's what it was, because it does not. It tends for rest. It's wishing for equilibrium. So when it has this now immediate project of trying to find equilibrium, it goes on one of these in multiple branches of the river delta. It starts to spread out its net, trying to. That's what that means. That's what it means when it's occupying space. You're occupying unique space to do the work that man has done, to do the work to tell his story, to describe him. Well, get him here and stir him up as a demonstrative skeleton, describing and then add the layers of his muscle tissues and connective tissues and blood vessels and organs, so forth, and then make him up into the figure that he is. We're speaking on things exact here and precise, and now and then expands forward his globe so much more, and then use him now when you're describing his organs and his organs and well, we're trying to describe him as a body now across one of these spheres now, and then add him up into his hormone changes moment for moment. So get him transparent, so you see his pipe work and you see his color coding, and then get him so that you can describe him as our evolutionist would, as a biological evolutionist would, as a physician would, as a dermatologist, as a dermatologist would, as a polymer scientist would, describe him from how an average Joe construction supervisor would. I mean, get him from the point of view of the caste, of the downcast, of the peasant class. Get him from the perspective of the bourgeoisie. Get him the perspective of an accountant who's 3 years in finance school and have half-aware schismatism, describing from different and add him up different elements so that, but real element, so that you get him from another just obscure perspective. When you think, why do I have this piece of data? It doesn't seem to have any use, but it is a piece of data because it characterizes it, even if it's flawed, if it's, but each moment that we can consider flawed or consider correct, it's the thing, because it's only made of the options to have consideration on its facts. So now, but back up still, and then you can oscillate between the gestalt and in the detail. But now go into the beat in your metronome of thinking now to the gestalt, and then watch him still at this attribution of a figure with facts, with 32 teeth, with 10 pints of blood and cerebral spinal fluid, and sending out electrical impulses up the chain in his central nervous system. Describe all these elements about him, but add him to one of these, and then describe him now continuously how all would like to talk about it. But for the sake of it, why not stick with memes? Why not stick with that he's one of these things that carry out memes, and evolution is happening on the mimetic level, where you're trying to send out ideas that humans can carry out. That's where is his source from? Where are these things coming from? But is this one of the ones that also hoping for a new way to reimagine the world? Is it also hoping that once it's comprehended, it will create a different rearrangement? Because why wouldn't you want a different rearrangement? Could this not be exactly one of the situations that you have a hint feeling is possible, just because of such the indescribable thing that it is, that you are alive, thrown into being with circumstances, and these things, they don't lend themselves easy to the opposite of suspicion. I mean, immediately be suspicious of the world, that they're up to no good. They really are not out for the best interest of each other. And then you can that's one way to see him too. But you could sparse him out where this is true and where it is not true. It is believable in one setting, and it's not believable in other settings. And what we're trying to bring together are the things that belong together. And belonging together are these different characters of a nation. These different characters of these individuals spoke about before, that show up on no one's radar as negative, as questionable. They are fully functioning, they are authentically actualized, and they can occupy Anthropocene, which will carry on this equality, which will carry on the resonation of this, which will carry on the resonation of this equilibrated, tranquil state of living, of cohabitation. It is beautiful, and only at this moment exists in this one imagination. Well, in this present imagination, in the exclusivity that is granted, knowing, of course, that hoping also, of course, that there are also others out there that are thinking down this same parallel line to really make something of this opportunity. Potential, we'll like to turn it into substance. We're trying to materialize an idea, and then, well, it's just uphill from there, because we'll only set up the agenda for succeeding generation, for posterity to carry out this, because to carry out this belief, to carry out this tradition too, and it will be a turning point for the rest of the world when this thing really starts to take on critical mass. I mean, I'm speaking on each person sitting in their time and thinking about it, and it's enough for you to reconstruct your life, sell your TV, pour out, leave where you're living to go out and do what is necessary in your part as a participant to change things. I mean, it goes that far, else nothing happened. The only thing that's happening here is mobilization and organization by explaining something that is not so. But you live in such a sophisticated age, if you're modern, that you feel like, even if I have the epiphany, this issue can be solved by letters and by mails. I mean, yes, anyhow it can be solved, but then it is of course granted, but it should be taken to each mind. It should be a household idea. It should be a household thought. It is only the thought should be a household thought. It belongs as a thought. It's the only subject worth discussing. I mean, this is trying to change everything that is possible for change. Education system, criminal system, rehabilitation, and these system intrinsic problems of poverty, addiction, deforestation, global warming. May I just go on with the nonsense, the litany of the poly crisis, but they are sourced. It's a great line because it's the only thing that travels you to the tangent to bifurcate into solution. They're all sourced in human activity. They're all sourced in human exertion. So great. Now you have a way to change things. But you don't attack from the out here, withdraw from the inside out, and break down and steal the culture by untangling the web of players. I mean, everyone sees this is the next line, but it doesn't send them to anything else but to send them to salvation. How can one part of the species intelligent, organize men and women so that they can go out and be a part of the effort to destroy the property and lower the standard of living on another side of the globe? I mean, these are unfathomable thoughts when one gets old enough, but when they're younger, they do not know what they're doing. So they have more grace upon them. They forget things. But when you look back on it, these are all cringe moments, but they are cringe moments that are still happening presently, because where are you? What is the time and where's the location? What are you surrounded by? Are you slowly seeing the unthreading of this virtuous lifestyle, of this healthy lifestyle, of this familially centered lifestyle? Are you seeing the church turn down and turn away from what the true teachings of Christ? Are you seeing religions turn away from what is the true teachings of their ancestors? I mean, all these things are set to shift off kilter, and they ought to be realigned by the same thing that shifts them off kilter: interpretation and reasoning and argument. And this is that battle that's swaying the chain. This is that battle that's swaying the balance of the world spirit. But here, man, it's just a bunch of argument on the other side to really turn the card table over and then sway the whole thing into a solid. It becomes consolidated, the idea, because the truth is to be expressed here clear enough that in the mind of the listener, they immediately reconstruct themselves and become to do the same type of work, to chase out this virtuosity that is promised to us. It's a birthright. It is one duty. It's one duty as a cosmopolitan to break out of this dissension character, return out of it to meta thought, and then immediately starts to play the real game that needs to be played. And then poof, that sounds so new age, but it's as technical as it should be, because there's no other way to characterize it. But they got on before and they turned it into something they mangled it, but it still can be salvaged, and here it is being used. That you're climbing out is to see this thing from a different angle. That happens every time where one changes the character. It's not being said differently here. It only means that where the directions are a little further or different or apart, meaning that it goes as far as making it an institution. It has to be permanent. It has to take soil. The ideas that are behind the system of explanation must be installed in walls. It must be written into policies. It must be taken on as a governmental agenda, because because that is where the potency is. I mean, when these things are taken into law, that's where it is, because the humans are assigned out their birthrights to come out from the top down. I don't know how they have these ideas, but I believe what they have done it's hard to speak on them too, because you have to give them congratulations where they deserve it, and give them the scorn where it's deserved. It's at this in this department, they are not equal to. They are really impoverished. This is the most impoverished department to think like gods, meaning that you're more helpful, and then it really gets far, meaning that they entirely start to extend the circle of sentiment of their help across the entire face of the globe. It takes on that form. So now this thing that is this planet that is the third one from the sun, it's a different thing when you get down into it. I mean, you have to describe it as that. I mean, it's the third thing from the sun, but there are really impoverished agendas into it. They're in it, and then that's where help helpful attention needs to go. It's solvable, but the mind is not set to increase things where it should be in this area. It's not taking on as a global governmental agenda. That's the institution I'm speaking of. That's where they will re-emerge, that church and state, and then both churches and states will start to pay tax to this department to have this change go on, to change out the rest of the corporations too. They're lending off the people. Their tax, instead of going into profits, to include the profit margin for those who are not, for also players, those who are deserving, but also those who are not. You're paying out the job of the adversary here. You're contributing to the thing, but it can be going on also. It can be contributing to the thing that can solve it. It's only pureness. There is a state here where man does not, because you cannot be trusted. Call him like electrons or dogs. Can trust them if you're building a mechanical system to know that one output is moving to the next component. The output from one previous or preceding component is moving into the following component. But in this case of corruption in humans, it's not very easy. It's not clear how to attribute fault when you're trying to diagnose the problem. But to a trained diagnostician, you just draw a larger X over the concentric circling and then minimize where the problem area is by eliminating the surroundings. So it's still solvable, but here, like what's spoken for, there's not an impetus to solve it clearly, because those in these positions are not really trying to lend themselves to more freedom and more enlightenment being placed in the hands of the masses, where then they will request for more of their rights in return. It's such a jovial game, but that's what you display. They're asking for rights to their bodies, and gay rights, and human rights, and civil rights, and women's rights. This is ludicrous if you think about him as a higher animal, but this is a true story. Of course, if you're amongst the humans and you read in your pages what they speak about have happened when yours and I were in absentia. But now, as the preceding generation make their present term, they're able to gain some of the outs of the light. They can see the horizon. They can see the horizon, and they're able to. And then there are some of the spillover from that horizon time that has been brought into the mix now, that when you're walking in usual places in the marketplace, humans are giving out thumbs up of approval. It's like, okay, I think they're reaching this character on the sign language area. They're also saying yes sir and thank you sir, at least in this little pocket of the world, and they're trying to have this mutual respect back. But it has to be cool. Each idea for man that makes him into God, it has to be fashionable. Men are a little difficult to put clothes on. It's like children too. It's a wrestle to get him to conform into this thing that he wants. So he's almost deceived into it under the pill to make it palatable by transfiguring it into a fashionable idea that is easily adoptable by, call them the youth are the most influencing in most of that period. And then it goes on to also those who are just period influencing. And so that's also, and then it's a great line, because separately, independently, they already come up with this language. All the language exists, but they're just not in the right configuration. They're not all in the right order, so they're not spelling out the exact thing that should be made from them. Not only so, the Tao is the player in this, but speaking now at the leg end or the output end of this process, like we were previously, they have all the language of influencing already out there. They're influencer to really get technical on what's going on here. There are those, and we wish to impart onto you a certain belief. Well, credit where credit is given. This is also what is being spoken of here, but trying to influence you in how you want to remember to be, like an authentically actualized individual who is existing in Eden with like-minded and kindred spirit to flourish into existence. And that's reconsolidating by bringing also into mixture, because there's also this reproductive mixture that's going on, where different races or different subgroups that were one remote from one another are now intermixing, and now you're bringing different genes. But these are the genes we're speaking of in the chronology we're speaking from, once again, our friends the proton accelerating into and bombarding into each other, forming new elements, and then after tectonic place tectonic, and then the separation of Pangea, they became separate and they evolved in that separateness. But here is a way that Pangea is not happening, but a similar effect of it is happening, or you have in that remixture, like you would have if the planets were physically combined. Well, who cares? We have it in another set. You have it where it's an electronic mixture. Ideas from divergent realms are mixing into one another. So why won't you have it coming up in this time period, the age of information? So it's clear that the spirit of truth, reemergence, happens electronically. There's no question about it. But when using things like electricity on this scale, it's one of the gifts that it is a cell phone that the parent gives to the child, so they can reach them when the time comes. So that's where you have this invention, but you have it invented by a certain set. It's not generally across each electricity. It's not, let's call it it's kept in industrialized nations, usually those who are tracing their ancestry to Europe and Eurasia. China caught onto it after the Opium Wars, but that's also incentive that just united the true battle, so you can have them going on between the superpowers. But it's not like it was a all hands on deck type of task. It happened in a certain subsection. It was spread out by neighboring countries, and predominantly is them who have possessed this information on how to build the world electronically. But most who are just endeavors into daily things understand the components that are at play, how circuit boards and transistors are used to create this transmission of auditory signals, how wireless networks, how Bluetooth and wireless waves are sent between receiver and transmitter for in a limited distance, and how all of this happens on the world. It happens in different places, but the spirit of truth, getting into it and having a connection with the world, happen in a certain subset. They were the ones that got the chance to take on that role, to take on that play. And I've always had a depth of gratitude to it, that it happens in this way and is being used for multiple purposes, multiple ways. Or multiple birds killed with that one stone, and different things goes on, from call them slave trades to what is naturally now the cross-Atlantic telegraph cable. I mean, these are all ways of trying to connect and reconnect Pangea, but it's happening from the stimulations of points sometimes simultaneously. Think about two ideas that emerge between foreign parties like Leibniz or Wallace and Darwin, and Newton and Leibniz with the calculus. They occur simultaneously because it's the same Tao that's playing on the mind. It's hoping for a certain set of events to take course, and it is doing its work in trying to plot it out. It's trying to send out an action signal. I mean, the world is intelligible. It's made of this. It's made of intelligent design. How could it be made of unintelligent design? There wouldn't be the possibility of describing it, because the description of the describer is credible to the creation that the describer is hoping or trying to describe. Every part of our ability to interrogate nature comes from nature's ability to create an interrogation agent. I mean, it's all just riddled with the obvious conclusion, but it's not drawn. It's not self-evident to everyone exactly what this conclusion is. Well, it's being done here, and hopefully it'll be taking on steam different places, and you can have one of those classic stories that I love to hear about a human. So here comes one, and then there is a thing that one says, and then it ticks on something about the world. It does something on the world, and here is a story that tells you about it. Well, no need for that, because understanding now this is a snooze fest. I've seen this trope long enough. Just get it on the road, and that's not delaying gratification. Being so salivating for eating, to put it crudely. I believe this should be here that we transition to other matters that are related on off camera.